I'm Alex, and this is Woke Fallout, the podcast where nothing's too sacred to question and nobody's too big to call out. I dig into the past, drag the present into the light, and drop the kind of takes that get people talking. Welcome to the Fallout. And today we're gonna talk about a brand new law that was passed July 1st, 2025. But before that, we're gonna introduce the Sex Purchase Act of 1999, as well as Gender Equality Act, as well as go into men's violence against women. And after that, we're gonna go through my thoughts and opinions about it all. Way back in 1999, Sweden introduced a new law, the Sex Purchase Act. And the Sex Purchase Act was part of the Gender Equality Act, and we'll go into that more later on. Okay, but what does the Sex Purchase Act actually mean? In simple terms, it means women are allowed to sell sex while men are not allowed to buy it. The reason for the new law was to protect those in vulnerable situations, to combat prostitution, reduce negative consequences for society and individuals, as well as reduce the demand for sexual services. It was also created to highlight Sweden's attitude towards prostitution as a form of exploitation. And even though prostitution is legal, brothels are still illegal, so you are not allowed to actually operate a business. And I guess it goes without saying, pimps are not allowed. So back in 1999, when the Sex Purchase Act was legislated, the penalty was just a fine. But in 2022, they decided to up it. So now, it's up to 1 year in prison. And now, with that background in place, we can actually talk about the law I intended to. In 1st of July, 2025, a new Sex Purchase Act was legislated. And this new law is part of what we like to call men's violence against women. But we'll get back to that later, okay? This new law, like the last one, is basically a digital version of it because it allows women to sell themselves online on services such as OnlyFans. However, it's illegal for men to buy that content. It's still legal to buy porn movies, right? It's basically for targeting content on demand such as live streams or direct order clips. The reason for this new law is to combat exploitation, grooming, trafficking, and drug abuse. So, basically the same as the last law. But here's the kicker. The penalty is the same as buying sex on the streets, up to 1 year in prison. Let's dive into the Gender Equality Act and the meaning of it, and I quote, "The overall policy objective for the Swedish gender equality policy is that women and men must have the same power to shape society and their own lives. With this as its starting point, the government is working towards 6 sub-goals. And the first sub-goal is equal distribution of power and influence, which means women and men must have the same rights and opportunities to be active citizens and to shape the conditions for decision-making in all sectors of society. And the second sub-goal is economic gender equality, which means women and men must have the same opportunities and conditions for paid work that provide economic independence throughout life. And the third is gender equality in education. Women and men, girls and boys, must have the same opportunities and conditions regarding education, study options, and personal developments. And the fourth sub-goal is an equal distribution of unpaid housework and provisions of care work. Women and men must have the same responsibility for unpaid housework and the opportunity to give and receive care on equal terms. And the fifth sub-goal is gender equality in health, care and social services, which means women and men, girls and boys must have the same conditions for good health and be offered care and social services on equal terms. And last but definitely not least, men's violence against women must stop. Women and men, girls and boys must have the same rights and opportunities to physical integrity. In simple terms, equality. Let's dive into the elephant in the room, men's violence against women, which is basically an umbrella act. It encompasses physical, such as punches, pushes, strangulation and threats with weapons. Psychological, with insults, threats, shaming, checking emails and checking phones. It also encompasses economical, so you are not allowed to make someone financially dependent upon you. And of course, sexual, the big one. You are not allowed to have sex against someone's will or when the person cannot consent, such as when it's really drunk, right? You're also not allowed to lock someone in or out of the building, or to control a person's social activities. It also encompasses the new law that was passed 1st of July 2025, the new Sex Purchase Act. With all that said, it's time for my thoughts and opinions. The Sex Purchases Act of 1999, the original one. The reason as to why it's illegal to buy but not sell is to protect women from human trafficking and stuff like that. And that is noble, I totally agree. However, if it were illegal to sell sex, they would have incentive to actually give up their pimp, or if they would legalize brothels, then it can be run like a business. And business have regulations to follow, so they could enforce regular health checks, mandatory protections such as condoms, fair pay and sick days. Either way, I don't agree with the system as it is. It's nonsense. And looking at the new law that was passed in 1st of July 2025, I don't see a reason as to why to allow selling content online, but not be able to buy it. The thing is, internet is huge. It's not only in Sweden, right? And so, their customer base is not only here. So, how are they protecting the women by not allowing the Swedish men to purchase the content? Having talked about those two laws, let's actually dive into the Gender Equality Act and my feelings about it. This is a big one, right? You may remember that the Gender Equality Act consists of 6 sub-goals. Let's discuss the first one, which is equal distribution of power and influence, okay? Now, women have had voting privileges from 1862. However, they did not have full voting rights until 1921, which is still over a century ago. So I ask you, how does women not have the same power and influence as men? I say they have had it for over a century, don't you think? And the next sub-goal in the Gender Equality Act is gender equality in education. Women were allowed to get a degree in medicine at the university in 1870. And all subjects in 1873, which is over a century ago. So in my book, women have had exactly the same right to education since 1873. How is that not equal? That's been over a century, come on. And the next sub-goal is economic gender equality, which basically means the same pay, right? Here in Sweden, we actually don't make a difference between a man and a woman if they are doing the same job, right? However, a majority of women tend to prefer to work with people, children, old people and stuff. And those professions tend to have less salary. If, however, women choose a male-dominated field, I'd argue they often have an edge, better chances at getting higher pay and less of the heavy lifting. Why? Because men usually hold the power in companies, and let's be honest, men can be pigs. And the next sub-goal is an equal distribution of unpaid housework and provisions of care work. Now, it depends on the couple, of course, but usually the woman tends to do more chores at home and take care of the kids, while the man do fix like the car, repair the house, mow the lawn, and stuff like that. So I kind of think it's a moot point, right? And the next sub-goal is gender equality in health care and social services. In Sweden, the healthcare sucks for both of us, equally, I can guarantee you that. Doesn't matter if you're a male or a female, you're gonna have to wait in line, and that line can get kinda long. Partly because of immigration, at least that's my take. And last, but certainly not least, men's violence against women must stop. Sadly, it happens. But it's not only men that beats women, it does happen the other way around as well. I'd even go so far as to say that women tend to prefer psychological violence. Now, let's put that aside and actually look at the umbrella term men's violence against women. And I'm gonna preface this by saying I do not condone violence for either parties. The new law that was passed in July 1st, 2025 is actually part of men's violence against women, which I think is kinda strange. How are us men the reason for women creating OnlyFans accounts, posting news online, posting videos, sex videos and stuff, Why should us men take accountability for their actions? Can't women take accountability at all? Oh, and if I didn't say it before, if a woman hits a man, it's also part of men's violence against women. Where's the accountability? And if you go back to both the law in 1999 as well as the new law in 1st of July 2025, why the double standard? Why can women sell content online and, in real life, but men cannot buy it? It's a double standard. They say the reason is to protect the women, and I'm all for protecting the women, but how about drug dealers, illicit arms dealers, hitmen? Those are dangerous professions. Shouldn't it also be legal then? Just to make it, equal and all? I guess equality only goes one way. You gotta pick and choose what you want and what you don't want. This was Woke Fallout, the place where comfort zones is shatter. I'm Alex, signing off. Stay bold, stay loud, and don't stop questioning.